Hello and welcome to the first rendition of Meet the Investor. My name is Daniel. I have Min with us today. Min, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to talk
Uh,
about.
yeah, me too. So this is our first Meet the Investor podcast. So you are the first guest, and I think you're actually a perfect guest because you're semi-new, but not really new to the investment game. 3 years of experience, 3 properties. So you've gotten kind of your foot, not only your foot in the door, but you started, turning the investments. What got you into deciding you wanted to go into real estate investing?
Yeah, so what got me so excited to get into real estate investing was I've always had a curiosity of real estate growing up, and I have a few buddies now through the soccer world that are real estate investors. And after I was done playing soccer competitively, um, I kind of just wanted to explore it. And once I got into, I would just sit on YouTube and kind of talk to my friends about it. And obviously, everybody comes across the analysis paralysis. How can I get into
Uh-huh.
real estate? You get kind of scared. You see all these videos of how not to do it, the right ways, not the right. So it kind of puts a little scare in you, right? So um, but me and my partner decided to go into it, and I really kind of had to convince her, and I really started looking into it. I was really interested in it, and then finally we purchased our first property in Austin as our primary house. And once we had our primary property, we had equity in the property, so then we decided to get into real estate more. And now we have two properties, two rentals, single family homes in San
Top of your
Antonio.
foot, right. So that's awesome. So you started out as buying your first property for your living space. And was your intention when you initially started to be like, hey, let's go into investing properties, or was it let's buy a property and kind of see where it goes, and after you built that equity, you realize you can turn that into into another property?
Yeah, so like I said, when I was done playing soccer, I started coaching kiddos, and
That's awesome.
yeah, so I met this couple that were real estate investors in Austin, and I wanted more information, so I took the initiative to ask them out to dinner to kind of see how they got started.
Ah,
So that's how I got my first mentor. And they had multiple properties in Austin, so they were, as soon as I asked them if they could have dinner to go talk about real estate and their journey, they were like, of course. So one day, I got my partner on board. We went out to dinner, and I remember my mentor bringing a sheet of paper with him and a pen, and he was super excited to talk to us about it, and that kind of got me into it. And kind of just seeing their journey. They started 2 years ago, and they had already multiple properties. Um, yeah, that's how I got started. And after that, I kind of just kept in touch with him. And one day, um, one day all of a sudden he just calls me up and he's like, "Hey, um, I'm buying two properties in this new build community. Buy two." And I was like, "What? I cannot do that. I can't afford that." So I started doing some research, and he kind of helped me. We had money saved up from our savings, and we were able to buy one property. Um, and then he kind of helped me. He kind of guided me through there for the first one.
so how important is it to have a mentor when you start in the real estate? I mean, obviously it's important for any industry, but specifically when it comes to real estate investing, because there's so many open questions when you get into your first property, right? Where should I buy? Which area should I buy? What am I looking for my cap rate, and all these different these questions. How important is a mentor, and how did that help you kind of establish yourself?
I think it's honestly one of the most important things once you get into real estate is having a mentor, someone that can kind of guide you, kind of give you the correct information. There's a lot of information out there. So kind of picking your market, where you want to invest, what type of investments you want to make. For us, me and my partner we have two kiddos, so we want hands-off properties. Our mentor focuses more on Class A properties, and that's kind of what we wanted to do too. Something that we don't have to, that requires less maintenance.
Hmm.
So we decided to go with the new construction route. which has been great for us. Obviously we still have a property management for those properties, but
Okay.
just to be secure. But yeah, it's been great. We have hands off, and yeah, having a mentor, I think it's one of the biggest things to get started.
So if you could look back, right, 3 years you've been in the game, if you could give yourself any advice now that your hindsight is 2020, when you first started, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
I think so for me, it would be for like all the new investors, and I'm still newish as well. I think getting the fact over the analysis paralysis phase. Because when I first started, I would and I feel like people do this, you get on YouTube and you want to get in the game, and you might have the money, you might not, but there's so many different ways. And um, we had we had the money to buy our first property, but it was mostly getting my partner on board and kind of going through that phase. And once I ran the numbers, showed the numbers, then we went for it, and now here we are.
Easy enough. So you talked a little bit about, your strategy and what strategies do you implement and how has that evolved since when you first started, as your first property, and how does that change for the second or third, if it does at all?
Yeah, I think like we mentioned, we want to focus on less maintenance, Class A properties, new construction homes. We want to, for us, we're not the biggest investors yet, but we want to, for us, it's more for like generational wealth for our kids. Um, having properties for them, paying off their college, and then just reaching financial freedom for us. But and to get other properties for us would be more, now that we got our first rental property, I was looking right away. I was looking to see how I can get my next one. And at that time, we didn't have money saved up for that. So I was finding creative ways to financing the second rental property. And that's when I came across HELOCs, and I did a ton of research on HELOCs. Obviously, it's a little scary to do HELOCs. People get scared, but I did my research. I wanted to see the real how a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, really worked, and finally got my partner on board. And we had, after COVID happened, we had tons of equity in our primary home in Austin. So we did decide to take out a HELOC on our primary home to fund the second rental property.
So for those who don't know what HELOCs is, I mean, that's the line of credit that you use to secure your home. So how did that work for you? What was the process to start the HELOCs credit?
Yeah, for us, the process was pretty much, you talk to a lender, you apply for the home equity line of credit. They'll look at your debt to income ratio, and once you get approved, it's pretty simple. It's pretty cheap to get a home equity line of credit. Obviously, the only cons to that, it is a variable interest rate, so it's not a fixed interest rate. So
Generally, it's a higher interest rate than like a standard mortgage loan that you're getting.
correct, yeah. So it can change with the prime rate. It can change month to month. So I mean, just for a small example, and you only pay on the interest only with the home equity line of credit. So 1 month, for example, I was paying, if my remaining balance was 26K, maybe your monthly payment was 180 depending on the interest rate. And then if the interest rate drops a little bit, then your monthly payment could be a little lower the next month. But obviously, if the interest rates go higher, then you pay a little higher. Now what the home equity line of credit is that, yeah, you're paying interest only, but there is a 10-year draw period. So after the 10 years, if you don't pay that off, then you're going to be paying interest and principal. So you're going to have more of a balloon payment. So obviously for HELOCs, they always say try to pay it off as quickly as possible.
Right.
And a lot of investors typically say don't use a home equity line of credit for a down payment on a rental property.
Right.
But for me, it made sense for us. We had a plan and we executed it. So for us was for our goal was to pay off that home equity line of credit within a year. So
Oh, awesome.
so we used it to fund our down payment, but we did have a little bit of savings. So we used some of our savings, and then we used the remaining as a HELOC. So we didn't use the whole down payment as our HELOC.
So did you and your partner sit down and say, "Hey, here's our income. Here's how much we have on the loan of the HELOC loan. Let's sit down and let's actually calculate exactly how much a month needs to go in for us to be able to pay off, the down payment that we took off as a loan."
Correct. Yeah. And for me, the biggest thing was if my renters can cover my mortgage,
Right.
plus the HELOC payment, the extra HELOC payment a month, then plus the expenses, some of the expenses, then I'm okay with that.
So what did you put on? What percentage did you put down for your down payment on your second, your first investor property?
It was 20%.
20% on that also?
Yeah, it was 20%. Yeah, so 20%, and then we had some savings, so we used some of that to cover the down payment, and then
Mm-hmm.
the remaining, which was like around 26K, I just put it on the HELOC.
Okay.
So now
Interesting.
we're paying down the 26K.
So you're paying down 26K. So do you take, do you take the rent money as well? So during that 1 year period, are you saying, "Hey, look, we're going to be struggling a little bit, or financially we're going to have to, lower our costs and our expenses, and we have to put everything down into a Helix"? Or are you still kind of living the same lifestyle that you were previously because you kind of set that gauge before you pulled the Helix loan?
Exactly, yeah. And me and my partner, we budget every month, so
Mm-hmm.
we use the Every Dollar app. So we budget everything, and our goal was not to kind of reduce our lifestyle. I mean, our lifestyle is really minimal. We're more of minimalist. We're not materialistic, so we save that way.
Makes it
But
easier that way.
makes it easier, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, as long as they could cover the mortgage and the HELOC, I was fine with that.
So a lot of questions, and you brought up the Every Dollar app. A lot of questions that initial investors or investors who are looking to get into the business are, well, how do I analyze my deals? How do I track and manage my income and expenses? How do I, what are some of the question one? What are some of the tech that you found was useful for you when you first started, and which tech are you currently using now as you've kind of grown into the middle of the I guess you're more of a, I don't consider you a beginner investor because right after your second investment property now you're starting to really build a portfolio. But what are some of the tools you're using now that you weren't using and you started out with before?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I mentioned, we started using Every Dollar, the app, to kind of track our and budget our monthly finances. That way we can kind of see, hey, we're spending more on groceries. Maybe we could reduce groceries if we had to, or we're going out too much to eat. Let's
Mm.
reduce that to kind of save money. That way we can save that for real estate. Also, like I came across Rentastic, which has been great. I love the app and the software, and I track everything through Rentastic. Everything goes through there, and then at the end of the year, once tax season comes up, I just go on there and print out my profit and loss statement and just hand it over to my CPA, and he kind of takes care of that for me. So it's a really great tool to use.
Thank you for the kind words. Yeah. So actually, by the way, and we came out with a new 1.1 update, which allows you more timelines on being able to pull your profit and loss and your statements. And then in the next update, we're actually going to allow you to determine timelines if you want for specific dates as well. So we have some cool new updates coming out. Yeah. So budgeting as well as, I mean, tracking your income and expenses. So how do you analyze your deals? I mean, do you have a tool that you use to analyze deals, such as understanding, well, here's how much our mortgage, calculator, as I'm sure, you can find hundreds of those online, right? Rentastic has it as well. But how do you analyze like the monthly, the monthly income that you're going to have? Because that's always the question that it's like, well, okay, I know if I'm going to buy a $500,000 property, I'm putting 100,000 down. I have a $400,000 mortgage. That's going to translate to somewhere to 1,500 with today's interest rate closer to almost $2,000 a month, right? So how do I find a property that's going to cover my monthly, mortgage, so that I'm not actually coming out of pocket, and at the very least I'm breaking even, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now the equity goes up, and there you go, you've made a couple hundred grand on top of it. How do you analyze that?
Yeah, so when I first started analyzing my deals, I was speaking with one of my buddies that he's a big time real estate investor in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And so he has his own Excel sheets, and I would just hop on the Zoom meetings with him. He was kind of showing me his Excel sheets. He handed me over one of his Excel sheets, so I kind of was just playing around with it. And then I came across my own online, which I did purchase, and it's been great. I use that Excel sheet. I kind of just the formulas already calculated for you. So all you do is you kind of just plug in the numbers, and it kind of lets you know how much cash flow it's going to produce, your expenses, and the sort things like that. And then also I've been using the like you mentioned, Rentastic deal analyzer, which is great. Kind of just go on there and plug in whenever I'm like just looking at properties. I'll just go on there and plug in numbers, and it gives you the numbers right away. So
All right. So are you actively looking at properties consistently as an investor? Is this something like that you say, you know what, no, let's wait 6 months and then we'll be ready in 6 months to be able to buy, buy property? Or at this point you say, look, we've done the Helix strategy, it works, let's just actively look, and if we find something, we'll pull the trigger.
yeah, so no, for me, I'm always looking, even if, like, for example, right now we're paying down our HELOC for our second rental property, and our thing is pay off that HELOC first before we purchase our third rental
Mhm.
property. But I'm not the type of person that is gonna wait. I'm always just looking on like, if I'm not playing soccer or any of my hobbies, I'm kind of just looking at properties, playing with numbers. Even if I find a great deal, I'm like, dang, I could buy it right now if I could. But it's just kind of good practice to have to just work. I try to do maybe like 1 or 2 deals a day, kind of just play with the numbers
Okay.
as practice
Okay.
to
That's
kind of
good.
not lose it.
That's good. So you're constantly. I mean, worst case scenario, what you're saying is if you don't, you're not ready to pull the trigger. At least you're allowing yourself to be able to practice to identify future opportunities that you would pull the trigger on because you have it. It's quick. It's easy for you to run. Right. So with today's interest rates, and I know this is a hot topic, and people talk about, well, you have to be careful not to pull the trigger. You can't buy properties. Interest rates are at 7%. Is that something that, as an investor, you're concerned about, or you go, it doesn't matter because I'll be able to refinance in a couple of years from now when the property, and if not, I'm still happy because I'm still only looking for properties, even with today's interest rate, for the rent to be able to cover the mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that all investors kind of think about it, and they're like, no, I don't want to do this. I could do. For me, when we got our second rental property, me and my partner, we talked about it. The interest rates were, I think they were a little bit over a 5. And then when I ran the numbers, I talked to my mentor as well, and it was more like if the numbers make sense with the interest rate, and it's covering your mortgage, your HELOC, your expenses,
Mhm.
then perfect. Your property is going to appreciate over time. Yes, hopefully we're shooting for interest rates to drop in the future, and then you can refinance then later. But for me, if the deal makes sense, if it's great, then I will pull the trigger. Um, it makes sense to me with now that we have 2 properties, just seeing the appreciation on it, and yeah, just for future. A quick example I can give you is on the second property that we purchased. We purchased it for 208, and when the appraisal came back from our lender, it came back at 250 for the
Nice.
new construction. So instantly we had already appreciation on the property. So it was great to hear. And that was a property that we kind of were in doubts because of the interest rates, but now
Right.
we went for it, and it's been great so far.
Have you ever thought about getting into the flipping game? I mean, I know that as for you, it's been buying to rent out and hold on to, but has that ever crossed your desk? And if so, how come you haven't pulled the trigger on that?
Yes, definitely in the future. I haven't pulled the trigger yet because for us, we have 2 toddlers, so it's a crazy life for us right now.
Okay.
So we like I mentioned, we want to focus on Class A properties, hands off. But eventually, I do want to get into flipping. Just because I have friends that are in the flipping business side of
Mhm.
things, and they're really good at it. And I've made a lot of connections through soccer, with repair guys, and I have buddies that can do can do anything in the house. So I have my connections there. But yeah, in the future, my goal is to become a real estate professional. Um, just go full-time real estate, and my partner has her career set. And I want to get into real estate and become a full-time real estate investor. And then I
That's
would
awesome.
become a full-time real estate professional. And then now we can use the tax benefits from being a real estate professional with her taxable income. But yes, I do want to get into flipping. Once I would become a real estate professional, I would get into flipping, and I've talked to my buddies in Oklahoma that they do flipping, and I would also want to get into becoming a private money lender for them,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
using my HELOC, because I have a big HELOC credit line. And obviously it's just sitting there. So if it's just sitting there, I want to put it to use. So one of my buddies was like, hey, if I bring you the numbers, if I bring you these
It makes
deals,
sense. Yeah.
lend me the money and we can both make money. And that's another way of raising capital for myself.
So how does that work? Let's say you've got, a buddy of yours who does want to do a flip and he needs some hard money. So you're sort of becoming like hard, cash money, hard money, loan, where they're interested, they come to you, you take out a credit line on yourself, and then obviously they're paying you interest on the credit line that you've taken out, and they'll be able to invest that in the property, flip it, sell it, and then ultimately pay you back when that works. Interesting.
Yes, so pretty much, and I haven't done it yet, and this is in the future. But yeah, pretty much, obviously you have to trust the person. I mean, I do trust my friend. Everything would be on paper as well. And yeah, they come to you with the deal. They'll show you the numbers, the property that they're looking to purchase, to flip, and then if as a hard money lender, I would lend the money. They would flip it. I'd be hands off, and within a couple of months, once they sell it, then they would obviously we would make the difference.
Right. One thing you mentioned, which is always another very hot topic, especially for those who are not in the real estate game, who want to get into the real estate game, which is tax benefits, right? Understanding the different type of tax benefits, because that world kind of opens up a whole new expense, right? A list of categories of expenses that you have that you didn't have prior to either being a homeowner, which it's not as owning the property that you're living in versus having a property that you're renting out. Category wise, you have different tax benefits, right? And it's a little bit more prevalent for renting than it is for owning the property. But what are some of the tax benefits that might have surprised you, that you didn't realize that you could take advantage of, before actually becoming a real estate investor?
Yeah, so that was one of the biggest things that we got into real estate investing, was after doing our research, was the tax benefits that come with real estate. And it's crazy how you don't know what tax savings you can have with real estate, but yeah, and our mentor too. I remember when we went out to dinner that one night, I was telling you about, um, we were like, yeah, well, we got this. And they were like, no, we got this. We'll expense it, as we spoke real estate. So we're going to expense it. It's part of my business. And I was like, what? That's crazy. You can expense this. They're like, yep. We were talking real estate. So, yeah, for us, like anything related to real estate, you can expense. And anytime I go eat now with some of my friends, we speak real estate, you can expense that. And it's crazy to kind of see the tax benefits of that. Obviously, you have depreciation with your rental properties that you can deduct every year. There's a limit, I believe is 25K. If you're making under 150,000, I believe it is, you can deduct that towards your W-2 income, which that worked for me this last couple of years. So with my W-2 job, I can use depreciation to deduct that, offset my income. And yeah, like I mentioned, one of my goals is to become a full-time real estate professional. And with tax benefits with that would be, now that if you become a real estate professional, how that works is it's kind of funky. You cannot have a W-2 job. So you have to be full-time real estate, into full-time real estate. And a benefit with being a real estate professional is now that you can, if you have a partner, and you have to be you have to be married. Um, and if you
You're
have a
filing
partner,
jointly, basically what you're saying. When you
correct,
file your taxes, you're
correct,
filing jointly,
correct.
right?
Yeah, you're filing it jointly, and if your partner is the higher income earner, and now you're full-time real estate, now you can there's no cap limit on what you can deduct.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so if your partner, let's say she's making $200,000, now you can deduct you can offset her income with your tax benefits. So at the end of the year, there's a chance that you could potentially pay zero in taxes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, so a lot of people are afraid because it does become complicated. I mean, especially as a new investor, you've got all these numbers being thrown at you, you've got all these new terms being thrown at you, and you've got all these new laws and rules and regulations that you probably are very afraid to deal with because if you mess up, right, it's oh no, what do you call it? The government's going to come after me and right. Did you was How long did it take before you started to feel comfortable with all of the new, I guess, documentation and all the forms and all the new lines in your taxes that you had to really write? Or do you still say, no, you know what, I just give it all to my accountant, he deals with everything, I've got my Rentastic spreadsheets, I've got my profit loss, I give it to an attorney, they deal with all of it for me?
Yeah, so since I'm still newish, I'm still scared of like how taxes work and
Okay.
stuff, to be honest. I remember when we first got our first couple of rentals, um, people were like, "Oh, if you have one or two rentals, you could probably do it yourself." But for me, it was like, no, like I want to do it the right way, the secure way. So my mentor, he suggested his CPA. So I got in touch with his CPA and kind of interviewed him as a CPA, and he focuses on real estate, and he's a really cool guy. So I decided um, to do my taxes with him,
Hmm.
and yeah, every year my job is to keep all the expenses in Rentastic. So that's what I do every time I go out to eat. If it's real estate related, if I'm going to submit it as an expense, I go on my app and take a screenshot of the receipt, upload it, and boom, there you have it. So at the end of the year, I kind of just go and download my profit loss statement and hand everything, all the documents over to my CPA, and he takes care of the taxes for us. And if
Awesome.
he'll send over a sheet, and I kind of go over it, and if I have any questions about it, I'll hop on a Zoom call with him to make sure everything's good.
Hmm.
And once everything's good, we sign and we file away.
That's awesome. Are there any best practices that you've learned while investing that you kind of implemented that have made your life easier? So I'll give you an example. We speak to a lot of new investors who don't realize, well, it makes my life easier if I have a separate bank account for every property so I can manage the income and expenses, right? And that's something that when we speak to new investors, it's like, oh wow, that's life changing or game changing because now they can track and manage all their income and expenses through one bank account and not have to worry about, right? Are there any best practices that you came across that have made your life a little bit easier?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm an organized person, so I like to have everything super organized. Like for example, we only have our primary and two rentals. So for each rental, I have my own binder,
Okay.
and every that binder has like all the paperwork for that binder. And obviously now, I was really kind of um I'm not scared, but I was the type of person that I didn't want to buy software to kind of stay organized, but I realized that I would recommend investing in the software.
What kind of, yeah.
And when I came across Fantastic, guess what? That's you can deduct that as an expense because
Yes.
it's real estate. So
Yes.
yeah, I bought Fantastic, and guess what? I used it as an expense for tax season. But um, yeah, keeping everything organized there, it's a game changer for me.
Yeah, I love the fact that whenever I come across someone who tells me they're still using Excel or, I mean, not that anybody uses pen and paper anymore. That's a little too ridiculous. But uses Excel to track and manage. So actually, my mother, who's got a couple of properties, which she sold them now, but she was using Excel before, and it was mind blowing to me how she'll sit there and she'll track all the different categories and track the properties. And once I came across Rentastic, and I realized that this software, by the way, obviously you can even auto classify your transactions, and it's just, I mean, it's mind blowing to me that people are still using Excel with all the technology out there, to actually have to sit there and spend hours trying to classify their transactions, income, and expenses. So cool. That's definitely a good one. That's definitely a good one. So what's in kind of the next 6 months for you and your portfolio? If you had to kind of say, if I look forward 6 months or a year, this is what I'm hoping. What does that look like for Min?
For me, like I mentioned, is paying off my HELOC right now, right?
Okay.
So paying off my HELOC, that's the primary goal. Pay off that HELOC. Once I pay off the HELOC, now I have my full credit of line available again, right? So once I have that full line of credit available, now it's then looking to purchase my next new build construction home. I think I still want to focus on maybe getting a new build, finding a good deal that makes sense for us, and being hands off, handing that property off to my property management company, and keep building single family. We want to focus more on single family homes for now, and then, like I mentioned, in the future, it might be flipping. I might use that home equity line of credit to do a rehab, maybe a BRRRR strategy, buy it, rehab it, and refinance it and repeat it again. So I definitely want to get into that. But for the next 6 months is pay off that HELOC and make sure that our two rentals are going good, and then start looking for my third rental property.
Awesome. It sounds like you've found a strategy, or a pattern, I guess, that works for you and your partner as far as moving on to the next property. That's pretty awesome. Any final words for any new investors who come into the game that turn around and go, you know what, if I get this piece of advice, that's the advice that I need to decide, you know what, I'm going to want to go into the real estate investing game and not, hold off anymore.
Yes, definitely. So I think the first thing would be, if you've done your research, if you're really passionate about with real estate, and you're kind of still in that analysis paralysis phase, go for it. If the numbers make sense, and you're okay with it, then go for it. The second thing I would say, as advice when I first started kind of looking into real estate, is a lot of people that are really into real estate, they want to get into real estate investing. They're always kind of like, oh, how do they have the money to buy so many properties in a year? How do they find money? Like, you must be really wealthy, but there's just so many ways to get into the game, right? So um, when I was doing my research, one of the first ways obviously is the VA loan, right? With military, you don't have to put anything down. So if you're in the military, there you go. And the other one is the FHA loan, right? So if
First time
for
homeowners,
for
yeah.
first, yeah, so for a new investor, you can get an FHA loan and put 3.5% down, and you have to live in it. You have to live in the property for a year, and then after that year, then you can move out, right? So a piece of advice, if I was single with no kiddos, what I would do right now is save some money, put 3.5% down on a property. I would buy a duplex. That's what I would do. I would buy a duplex, put 3.5% down, move in, rent out the other side, have the tenant pay my mortgage, live in it for a year, and then rent it out, rent both sides out, and then rinse and repeat that process. And there you go. You have your first property. Um, I think that's the biggest piece of advice, is that I think anybody can get into real estate, and it is a game changer. And obviously the end goal is to have financial freedom. Everybody's financial freedom is different. Some people might want 1,000 properties. Some people just need maybe 5 properties, and they're okay with that. So it's just up to the person.
I think that's great advice, by the way. The duplex idea is something that I've heard a couple of times, which is awesome. The other side of it is, which you talked about, is establishing a goal. I mean, what is your goal? What are you looking to accomplish here? Are you looking to build a network of, portfolios of properties where you're going to have 5, 10 of them, or Are you looking for, just a little, another $500 a month of income, coming in? And I think that's the. Do you work with an agent? Meaning, when you do you work with agents to say, hey, I'm talking to 5, 10, 15 agents. They all know I'm an investor, and if they bring me deals, or is this, what? No, I'm only looking myself. I want to manage the entire process now, and it's just something I want to find. I want to find. I want to review. I want to do the analysis paralysis, and I'm going to be the one who pulls the trigger on these.
I definitely have an agent. She's a family friend. So I trust her, and she definitely they have a brokerage, so they manage our they have a rental management company, so that's who I use for my rental management property as well. So yeah, I used her as
For
for
what?
deals. They'll send me
Awesome.
deals, and kind of just to keep me aware of deals in the future. And then whenever I'm ready, I kind of reach out to her and say, hey, I'm interested in this deal, and they've been great of kind of being in my team.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, having sounds like you found a good network of I guess team members that you can work with between your mentor, your property management, your agent, yourself, your partner. You have a good community. It sounds like, and that's very important. That is absolutely something that we find the most successful agents are the ones that are willing to ask for help, are willing to go to people who've done it before and have the experience and say, here's what I want to do. How did you get from where you are to, or from where you started to where you are? And they just learned from the mistakes of, their team members. So that's awesome. Min, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for, giving some nice tidbits of advice, and spending the time to kind of, explain a little bit about how you started your journey experience, and some of the strategies that you use. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And like I said, I mean, I'm still new. I would consider myself still newish in the real estate
Mm-hmm.
game, but even with 2 properties. But yeah, anybody can get into it. Establish your goal. Make sure you have a goal and set. Make sure you have a good team underneath you, and just go for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll catch you guys on the Net Meet the Investor. Take care for now. Bye.